It's another episode of Getting to Know Seahawks Twitter, and I am joined by yet another phenom celebrity.
No, stop it.
What? I'm trying to gas you up. This is fine. Listen.
Okay, it's your show. Go for it.
I very much enjoy you because I think we have the same sense of humor. And I base this off of you liking some of my tweets. That might not be a good thing, by the way, because I'm not exactly the, funniest person in the world. But his avatar is the Space Needles as the monsters from War of the Worlds. Am I correct on that front?
You're correct. I found a nice piece of art, a local art by a Redmond guy.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And it's just, I fell in love with it. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a cool pick. He writes for Field Goals. He hosts the Beast Pode podcast with Michael B. Jargon. He is John David Fraley. John, thank you so much for joining me. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, it's so much fun. I've listened to a couple of the others, guests that you've had already on this, and thank you for inviting me. I'm not sure exactly what I've done other than be associated with Mike, who's very cool, to deserve this, but I'm totally going to run with it and give you the dumbest answers to whatever dumb questions you can come up with for me.
Perfect. I appreciate that because most of my questions are dumb. I'm going to start off with, why does Michael B. Jargon keep tweeting weird gifs of rat eat cheese?
So, Seahawks Twitter is a strange place. I mean, it's delightfully strange, but it's also weird strange, and sometimes even bad strange. But all of those are good because they all fall under the umbrella of strange. And I actually don't know the answer to this.
Perfect.
It's some strange reason that he came up with, and as all origin myths must go, there's some secrecy and some debate as to how it started, and you're probably going to just have to ask him. I don't know about the rats.
I will definitely have to have him on at some point. Honestly, if those were used as advertising for Chuck E. Cheese back in the day, why would you ever bring your kid there?
It's got to be some sort of parody, right? Like that's what a parody of Chuck E. Cheese is what I'm hoping.
I don't know. I mean, looks like he is a washed-up serial killer that somehow turned into a mascot for a child restaurant and ball pit chain of, I guess, birthday party restaurants. I don't even know what to call it. I used to go to the Discovery Zone. We did not have a Chuck E. Cheese in Hanover, Massachusetts, where I was growing up. John, I've loved that Beast Pode has been putting out at Beast Pode, P-O-D-E.
That's correct.
Mount Crushmore bracket. Could you explain it for the class? To me, what I'm seeing, it's a bracket of your favorite cult hero Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, so this is one thing that we try to do at the Pode and at the blog, which, yes, we call it the blog. I do not apologize for that even a little bit. As we try to make these brackets from time to time. So everyone's making brackets about stuff, right? Well, we're just going to make them pretty Seattle sports centric because that's our area of expertise or supposed expertise. And so we made one about, first one's called March Maddening that we made about a year ago. It was about all the people who drive you crazy in Seattle sports. And Tom Cable ended up winning that one. Deservedly so, as it was actually not even close at the end. He really ran away with that competition. We did one with Seattle Sports Moments a few months ago, but it was good and bad both. See, we're not really into just enjoying things that are good all the time. We're into also enjoying the things that are bad.
Okay.
That's kind of what being a Seahawks fan is all about. Is trying to leverage the bad into good and pretending that the bad is good sometimes. So we did that one, and then this new one is all about the cult heroes. You're right. These are all the guys who aren't big stars. We try, if you ask who's on like the Mount Rushmore of Seattle sports, you get all the same answers over and over. If you ask who's on the Seahawks, you're gonna have Russell Wilson and Walter Jones and maybe one of the LOB guys. And Steve Largent, Kenny Easley. Those guys are going to be on your Mount Rushmore. Well, you know what? We don't care about the big stars. We care about the guys that we loved irrationally, and that's what this is about. Guys that you loved who maybe weren't the best. Sometimes we're really good at their position, but we're not big stars. We just don't want a household name. Golden Tate is about the biggest name we had in there. And even so, he's more beloved as a cult hero here than he would be even by the other teams he's played for. And so that's kind of the line. It's the Golden Tate and below line. Anybody like Bobby Wagner? No, you're not going to see him in the bracket. Russell Wilson, not a chance. So that's what we've been doing with it. And so it's been super fun. We like to find these brackets that are off the beaten path just a little bit at least. And it's fun to see these cult heroes again who we haven't thought of in a while, like Thomas Rawls, like Jordan Babineau, people like that Red Bryant, who's still alive. Red is in the tournament still. Let's go, Red. I don't have any favorites, actually. I'm just saying that for fun.
I like hearing that there are this many guys, though, in Seahawks history that are a part of this. And to narrow it down for me, because I'm trying my best to, like, know what I'm talking about, which a lot of people would argue I have taken a very long time to do. What 3 cult hero Seahawks is it most important that I know about? You just mentioned a couple. You mentioned Golden Tate, who's as high as we go. You mentioned Red Bryant, who I am familiar with. Jordan Babineau, who I am familiar with. Thomas Rawls, who I am familiar with. Who should I know about that I probably don't know about?
Well, I mean, there's C-Mike. I mean, just among people who hang out on the godforsaken app of twitter.com, C-Mike is a little bit of more than just a little bit of a cult hero. We love him. We love to say that he did nothing wrong, when in fact there's a chance he may have done 1 or 2 things wrong in his career. He may have missed a pass blocking assignment once. He may have fallen down out of sheer awesomeness. Let me tell you, he did not fall down out of clumsiness or because his foot got cut. No. He fell down because it looked cool. Okay. Let's see. So see Mike. Well, Michael Robinson. I mean, one of the originals who really got connected with the fans. I went through the Real Rob report, which he did in 2011, 2012, where he would just do locker room interviews, and just in a terrific style. And he could even get Marshawn Lynch to talk to him. They were buds. And so I know, right? And so you got to talk about Michael Robinson in that vein. After that, after those 2, I mean, everybody loves John Ryan. He's just one of the coolest dudes, and everybody who interacts with him, they're just like, he's just a real guy, you know. And his wife Sarah is awesome, and she's been on our program before.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Oh yeah, she's a great interview, and a very, very funny comedian. Oh man, so they were like the power couple of Seahawks before Russ and Sierra were.
That's a cool power couple, though. I mean, special teams deserve to be power couples, too. Especially
approachable.
Right. And I mean, shoot. I mean, he's got a great guy following in his wake, and Michael Dixon, who I would imagine is on this. Is he on this Mount Crushmore, too?
He just lost to Mike Robb. In fact, he just exited the tournament. I just updated it right before we spoke, 10 minutes before we got on. I was updating all the results, and he's out. But he made a nice run into the Elite 8, which I didn't come up with a clever name for. The Alove 8, the alike 8. I don't know. That's more visual though.
There's a little bit of, what is that, alliteration? Although it's with vowels. I don't know what the term is for that. You know what? English class, it's so far in the rearview mirror. Very cool that Michael Robinson's still aboard. I remember Michael Robinson for being a quarterback at Penn State. That he turned into a fullback and has been able to play all those positions, because I know he played a little wide receiver at Penn State too. That's a lot of variety to be playing at the college level and at the NFL level too.
He was
big.
He was the emergency quarterback in one game. Almost saw the field. He was like, oh, if anything happens, that's the next guy who's going to be taking snaps. We really wanted that. So that was like 2011, sometime when we were playing with Tavares Jackson and Charlie Whitehurst that year.
Oh, that year. Yes, I during the pandemic, we watched some old games, and I watched – oh, who was it?
Don't tell me you watched the Browns game. Yeah, please don't tell me you watched.
I watched
not the Browns game. Oh, no.
Danny, my co-host, told me, you need to watch this game to appreciate where the Seahawks are now. And I was like, dang, that made me appreciate covering the Houston Texans too. So, wow, that game was something else.
If we were on my show, I would have slightly stronger language. Than just dang or something else. It was slightly stronger, I think.
Believe me, I have a sailor's mouth, but I'm supposed to because of who I work for. Yeah. Keep it clean as best I can.
I know.
Speaking of keeping it clean, Christmas is right around the corner. That's a terrible transition. But
horrible.
Here's an even worse transition. I'm going to ask a weird question. If the Seahawks were a Christmas movie, what Christmas movie would they be?
So they're not gonna. It's pretty easy. I mean, you want to say Die Hard because they never die. I mean, they're never out of a game. They're down 15 with 35 seconds left. I think Russell Wilson is still devising ways to win that game. It's not Die Hard. Mainly, and I cannot stress this enough, because Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
Oh,
that's there's a first thing that needs to be out there right away. Anybody who's going to answer Die Hard, even though it's perfect, would be misanswering the question entirely.
Everyone that gets into that, they go down that road. It's either a Christmas movie or it isn't. I don't see the point of the debate. All I know is that I look like Harry Ellis, Hans Booby, I'm your white knight, and people constantly remind me of this. I went out drinking a Coke, perhaps snorting some before. You know, sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
So it's The Nightmare Before Christmas, I think, is my real answer.
Nightmare Before Christmas, okay.
Oh, yeah, because the first half of Seahawks games, generally, a nightmare. And then there's Christmas.
And then at the very end, they are able to figure it out. You're right. I mean, this year's been a little different, though, right? I mean, they've been winning in slightly more convincing fashion. We talked about that on Thursday morning on my show. Danny and I were talking about how they've been winning by a bigger margin of victory, though the Jets' victory definitely helped out a lot on that. Nice transition.
I'm switching hats for topics, so now I have the Super Bowl hat on, because Seahawks are going back to the Super Bowl this year. Nobody thinks it, but they're going back to the Super Bowl this year.
You know what? I like that. And I like that you're switching hats for switching topics. That's something that honestly I've never thought about.
You had your Sonics gear on. I had mine on. That was a great beginning. I really enjoyed that.
We can keep going through this. I like this. I like this a lot. They have been closing out games slightly stronger, and I will say that as far as my Christmas movie, I'm hoping that It's a Wonderful Life. I'm hoping that we thought the Seahawks defense was a mess, you know, just like the Bailey building and loan, where you've got Uncle Billy who's losing $8,000 and has a pet squirrel and a pet raven and all sorts of other foolhardiness going on in his office. But at the end, you find out that maybe the defense wasn't so bad all along, because that's what George Bailey finds out. It's not about being
very good.
It's about having friends. So I'm hoping that the defense can be that. Do you think the defense can be that? Because that's the key to them getting to a Super Bowl. They got to keep improving, and they have improved over the last couple of weeks, but they haven't gone up against very good offenses the last few weeks.
Giants and Jets are a great time to get well. I think they're definitely better if Dunlap comes back. I think they're definitely better with Adams and Diggs both playing side by side. Adams can do all his freelancing and be all over the place, because they can rely on Diggs. And when they're both out there, the sum is greater. The sum of the parts is greater than just those two guys out there. Diggs without Adams, I think, is going to get exposed a little bit, but Adams really makes Diggs a better player. And I think that as long as you get some pass rush, and you will, if Dunlap plays, and you'll still see Rasheem Green. I believe that Rasheem Green is going to be something special. I still not Pro Bowl, all pro, but I mean like a serious sack guy. And I believe it's going to happen next year. I think it's the interior pressure we're waiting for, and I think we're going to see him blossom in these playoffs.
They have so many solid contributors now. And at the beginning of the year, I did not think that we would be feeling that way, because you bring in Benson Mayowa, and it was talked about this offseason. Okay, well, Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin, they might be able to fix this pass rush. Bruce gets hurt so early. Benson's been banged up a lot this season. But between the additions of Dunlap and Snacks Harrison, and then you throw in what you've gotten out of Poona Ford recently since Snacks Harrison has been on the field. Jaron Reed's played better than he did last year. LJ Collier is actually a solid player. Maybe doesn't live up to the first-round billing, but I'll take a contributor over a non-contributor. And Rasheem Green's in the mix too. They have a lot of guys, and it's weird because last year I think we looked at all of them, and it was basically, hey, is Jadeveon Clowney healthy? If he's not, oh no.
Then we got nothing, yeah. And that's kind of how it felt going into this year. But then when you've got Jamal Adams as an extra defensive end at times, that changes things. And if you can drop KJ, you can drop Bobby into coverage and blitz Adams like that, then it is like running three defensive ends out there, two of them pretty elite in Dunlap and Adams, and then another guy whoever happens to be playing at that moment to kind of clean things up as well. And you've got no holes. I don't think you don't have no serious holes on the defensive roster. And you had places that offenses were taking advantage of just missing personnel and several backups. But you've got Trey Flowers playing better. You've got Shaquille Griffin back. Neal and Reed can both play. Ugo Amadi blossoming as well. There's no serious hole on the defense. And if they are average to slightly above average and the offense continues to be top 5, and I think they'll get back there. Russell Wilson had his bad weeks, but I think they'll get back there. Then I think that it's them or the Packers, and I think it's a 50-50. So why not us this year? Why not again? We've lost enough playoff games recently. It's our turn.
I like you giving me some of this sunshine because I find myself constantly negative about whatever football team.
I'm an optimistic person.
That's good. We need more of that in this world. I would question your optimism about Trey Flowers. Not that he's been awful, but he's not particularly good at corner. I think he has his moments where he's solid, but he has also, I think, moments where he struggles and it feels like his self-confidence gets hit pretty quickly. I don't think he has as short of a memory as you need to play cornerback.
That's an interesting point. I'm going to give you that. But on the plus side, I think if it's going well for him, I think he can really make some plays. We saw him a year ago start to turn the corner, it looked like, and then for whatever reason didn't. I
thought it all went to heck for him. Hell for him. I don't know why I'm saying heck.
Yeah, there you go. See, look, it's not that hard. You can do it.
It's not that as much as like I'm too lazy to edit this out after the fact, but hell, I guess, isn't bad.
No, you can go with that.
I've been conditioned to think it is. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I'm not gonna drift down that road. So I think it all went to hell for him when he went up against Mike Evans last year. And Mike Evans killed him. And it was bad. He didn't call for pass interferences, and Evans was just jumping over him. And look, Evans is one of the best receivers in the league. But Flowers never really came back from that. And my question is for Flowers or
that's going to happen.
Dunbar, who doesn't seem to 100% when he's healthy get what Pete Carroll's trying to do, at least based off of what we hear from Pete. And DJ Reed, who I like, but it seems a little small. I wonder if that matchup against the Packers that I am with you, if I think it's coming too, I am wondering if they are capable of making the occasional 3rd and 9 stop, because that's how they lost the game. Those 2 3rd and 9 stops, which is a bummer. Right after your right tackle I think it was one of the Smith brothers, I forget which one, come off the edge at Zach Russ and put them in a situation where it was 4th and too much to actually go for it.
As long as the Seahawks don't get into 3rd and 13 or 3rd and 14, I think they'll be fine.
Which they found themselves in a lot of this year. Russ has taken these ridiculous sacks, and to transition to the offense, that's what I wonder about. Because I know that they have all of this skill, and that with Russ and DK and Tyler Lockett, that's quite the triumvirate. You throw in the tight ends. If Chris Carson's healthy, if Carlos Hyde and Rashad Penny are healthy, I mean, that's a lot of weapons. And the offensive line has actually been better this year. But something's up, it feels like, with Russ. And while I'm happy with what I saw from him against the Jets because it seemed like he took what was available to him, there's another part of me that wonders if against a good team or a good defense, and in particular a team that is good on defense but also can score points, because I don't know that Washington football team
is good defense though.
Right, very good defense. I'm curious as to if he starts, for lack of a better term, playing a little hero ball. Because some of the throws, and I would point to that one throw he had against the Jets, I wasn't a fan of it. I know that this was, for the most part, an understandable throw. But that interception that he threw on the left sideline, I thought the defense back had pretty good position on it. It is DK Metcalf. Maybe you can jump over him.
It wasn't a bad throw. It was a good play by the DB. I think you're going to get those sometimes from Russ. But you're worried. Let me see if I understand you correctly. You're worried that he might be regressing. Is that where you're worried?
Regressing? Took me a second on that one. I was like, wait, did you regress? I'll allow it. Good job.
Right.
It's not that he's regressing as much as it feels like sometimes he is just looking for that big play when there's something available right in front of him. And I mean, that might be also on the offense and calling plays that allow for things to get open quickly so that a good pass rush is not going to be able to sack him before one of those routes develops downfield. But that mindset where he has of always wanting to make plays, it's what makes him so good.
That's the double-edged sword, right?
And it just feels like against the Rams and against the Giants and those teams, maybe Washington football.
Saints, maybe.
And the Saints too. That's a good point. The Saints have a good pass rush. Against those teams, is he going to be able to extend those plays? Because when I saw him trying to do those spin moves against the Giants a couple of weeks ago, I was reminded of UW quarterback Jacob Eason, who
you made me cough on that one. Yeah. They both like the 25-yard sack, don't they?
Yes, they do. Yes, except for Russ, there's no excuse because he can still move a little bit. But it feels like against those teams, they've figured out the proper way to keep Russ from being able to extend them to the same degree that he maybe was able to 2-3 years ago with those little loop-de-loops that he does behind the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, there's no question I'd rather see an unfamiliar team in the playoffs because a lot of these other teams know kind of maybe how to goad Russ into some of his old bad habits. But, I mean, it's a double-edged sword with the bad sacks and the checkdowns and the deep plays. I mean, everybody wants him to check down, except we also want him to take the deep shots all the time. We want the best of both worlds, and you're just going to pay with Russ. You're going to pay for those deep shots with some checkdowns he should have taken and some sacks that he shouldn't take. But that's the price of taking all the deep shots. So in the overall, it's positive, but it just hurts so bad when he misses the easy play.
Yeah, it does. The good thing is, I mean, we are real first world problems here.
Seriously.
Complaining about a guy with his career high touchdown passes with 3 games left in the season, 36 touchdown passes. The interception number, I get a little annoyed by that, but I'm the most spoiled sports fan ever growing up. So that's just me. Okay.
One last thing. And Russ is, of course, going to finish the season with the most total touchdowns of anybody in history after 9 years. This is something I looked up the other day. He's only a couple behind Peyton Manning. It's 288 to 286 for total touchdowns scored on the ground and through the air after 9 seasons. He's gonna total touchdowns, exactly. Peyton had like 13 rushing touchdowns. Russ has 30 or something like that. That's what makes up the difference in between the two. But he's going to finish his 9th year with the most touchdowns in his first 9 years. That's guaranteed. Right? Like, this is the thing to remember, is that all the bad plays add up and we remember them, but there's a hell of a lot more good plays than bad plays.
100%. And that's the weird thing with Russ is this year it just feels like there's been more bad plays than ever before. And I think that has some people a little more concerned because you're like, can Russ actually cook? And it's weird because I think everyone is in agreement that Russ is one of the best quarterbacks in the game and that you should have your offense geared around throwing the football. But I think in certain games, and this is what I want to see against the Packers, I feel like they had the right strategy the last 2 playoff losses. The weird thing is they just couldn't run the football against 2 teams that the next week gave up. I think the Rams got 200 plus on the Cowboys. And then you had the 49ers almost give up 300 yards. Or excuse me, the 49ers almost got 300 yards against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, you got it.
And it was good. It's weird that it didn't work out for the Seahawks at all in either of those 2 games.
There you go. They should have run more than like the typical team in those games in the playoff, and it should have worked, and it didn't.
Just didn't. Yeah, it's weird. It's unfortunate. Maybe this offensive line is the one to do it. I like the matchup with Green Bay because of that. I think that they could run all over them. They have not used a whole lot of Chris Carson this season, and I always chuckle when I hear that the Seahawks aren't a very good running team this year. And I'm like, well, you're not watching. I mean, they just don't run it that much. They have for a reason started running a whole lot less. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. But with Chris Carson now healthy, I'm excited. I'm excited about the playoff run. But again, it all boils down to what happens against LA as far as how I'm going to feel confidence-wise.
That's right. And the Seahawks will be in the playoffs. They have to go on the road. This is the year to go on the road. Home field advantage is done. It doesn't exist in the NFL anymore this year.
Yeah.
So it's a 50-50 split across the board. Home teams and road teams have won the same amount of games.
It's been so strange. And you have a couple of teams that have actual fans in the stands, but
it doesn't make a difference.
Right.
I mean, when you just have 10,000 people there.
It's a shame for the Seahawks because women feel.
I'm a season ticket holder.
Oh,
you're speaking my language. I've been there 15 years.
15 years. Wow, that's impressive, man. Congratulations. That is a cool. That's a long period of time to go.
Seen everything.
Oh, that's awesome, man. All right, I want to shift into Seahawks Twitter talk.
Okay, I'm going to switch hats only because we have to switch hats. So I'm going to put a little Sounders hat on.
There you go. All right.
Here. All right, we're in the Sounders, but we're still talking Seahawks Twitter.
Describe Seahawks Twitter in one word.
That can't be done.
Yes, it can.
who can a Seahawkie? Can I do that? That's not fair. That doesn't.
No, that's lame. No, you can't do that. That's
okay.
Even for this show.
I have something slightly less lame than that. Okay, Seahawk game. Seahawks Twitter is like Seahawk game watch. Seahawk game day. Is Seahawk game? You admitted the question is dumb. Yes. This has been established already.
Yes, but you still need to do one word. One word. Your 4 predecessors have done it. This is the one thing that we have constant.
Okay. What's the question again? Give me the question one more time.
Try Seahawks Twitter in one word, not in 3 words.
Okay.
In one word.
Unbearable. Well, although we are an acquired taste, there's a lot of us out there doing a lot of bits, making a lot of accounts that aren't always completely earnest. So I think fine, tricky.
Okay,
yeah,
wait, hang on. Is it acquired or is it unbearable or is it tricky?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Look, this reminds me, that word unbearable, and I'm gonna have to post the link to this under when I post it. Reminds me of a time when I was in Houston when my 2 co-hosts got in a fight in front of me, not a fist fight, but just a verbal fight, and I just sat there awkwardly watching, like the small child. His 2 parents are getting divorced. One of my good friends, Mike, yelled at my co-host, another one of my good friends, Seth, who was a former NFL player, and called him unbearable 12 times at the top of his lungs, a series of like 7 seconds. And after that's done, I just slide in and say, "It's Mad Radio on Sports Radio 610. We'll be right back," because they both stormed out of the studio because they were both angry. Yeah. So unbearable. I kind of want you to pick unbearable between those 3 words, but okay. You pick 3 words. So John Fraley, the first cheater in getting to know Seahawks Twitter. That's fine. That's
correct. Unbearable. My answer is unbearable.
Unbearable is a good one. I like that one. How did you first join Seahawks Twitter? Because I think watching football and having Twitter up on your computer or on your phone at the same time is a very fun experience. It's one that I have been doing for like 8-9 years, ever since I started covering football for my job. What first got you on it? Especially if you're at a game, I'd imagine it's a little difficult to be on Seahawks Twitter in the midst of the game, but of course, there's way more Seahawks Twitter from Monday through Saturday.
Yeah, if I'm in the stadium, that's really not happening hardly, except maybe to post a video. It depends on stadium Wi-Fi. Well, kind of Danny got me into this, Danny Kelly.
Everyone, okay, five people, and just about all of them have said, yep, Danny Kelly brought me in. So, okay.
The original traitor, that's right.
I don't want to cross Danny Kelly ever, because I feel like he's just got these mafia tendrils everywhere, and that maybe he's got some KGB-esque agents anywhere. So if I were to say, "Oh, Danny Kelly, overrated," which, by the way, I'm not saying I like Danny Kelly a lot. I don't know if he knows who I am, but that is
funny.
something else. He has brought everyone together. This is his baby, from the sound of things.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people you see on Seahawks Twitter were like recruited to field goals through Danny when he was the editor-in-chief there from 2011 or so till 2015, 3 or 4 years right there before he got his work at the Ringer, which congrats to Danny. He deserved. He's one of the coolest dudes around. really just keep that in mind. Hi, Danny. Thanks for everything. Yeah, he hired me on at Field Goals, just noticed that I wrote some stuff. And pretty much everybody you see from, Nathan to Mike to, I could name 10 more guys on Seahawks Twitter, even Chan, who all wrote at Field Goals at the same time. And that was Danny bringing them all on. And he said, hey, you guys should join Twitter. It's fun. And so he was wrong, of course, because it's the worst. But
so bad now. Oh my God.
but he was right. I've met so many cool people through there, and it's really all his fault. And thank you, Danny.
It's amazing, this community. It's different. When I was covering the Texans, there's a Texans Twitter, but
of course,
there isn't really a uniform feel to it, where Seahawks Twitter has this learned side to it, this not looking at it in as simplistic a way as the traditional sports talking head or talk show host like myself might lay it out for the unwashed masses. I'm just kidding. For the people that listen, because a lot of them aren't generally on the internet, and they're not going to look for nuance as far as, taking a look at some of the advanced statistics that have been put out there and how there are so many different ways to break down football. It's a very cool part of Seahawks Twitter. I feel like I am learning more football since I have come here, because there are just a lot of different ways to look at things. What's maybe the thing of, in your time on Seahawks Twitter, that before you didn't really know about football, that being around all of these people you started to really buy into?
Yeah, I think it's definitely the running backs don't matter portion, in that, growing up, so I'm an old guy, and in Seahawks Twitter, I'm like one of the dads. I'm in my 40s. I have been watching. All right, now I'm not apologizing. It's just how it is, and I embrace it.
We need some people from the, what is it, Generation X?
I am total Gen X. I'm 46 years old, smack dab in the middle, right there. Grew up a teenager in the 80s. Oh man, MTV when it was brand new, that was the best. Okay, so anyway.
MTV. I said,
but that was back when they played music videos.
Oh yeah, it was. I think when I was a kid was when MTV started to turn into basically reality TV shows.
Reality TV.
I remember in college was where you had like Rock. Wait, that was VH1, Rock of Love. And I confused the two channels. Again, I wasn't allowed to watch the channel as a kid. Anywho, continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a different story altogether. You and I can get into that sometime. I'm sure we can share similar type of stories in that case. But I totally lost my train of thought, so I have no idea what I was saying. Oh, yes.
Running backs don't matter.
So I grew up like watching, these amazing running backs. I loved Roger Craig for the 49ers. Oh, man. Although he was probably running back who mattered because they used him right. So that's a different story altogether. But then I watched Sean Alexander, fell in love with him. Oh, man, that guy could score touchdowns like nobody else. And then the guys like LaDainian Tomlinson. And you just grow up thinking that those guys are really making the play happen. But it turns out they're super replaceable except for just a few. Like, for example, I would never say Marshawn Lynch does not matter. He made something out of nothing so many times that a different running back in his situation for the 2012, 2013, 2014 Seahawks were maybe not making Super Bowl trips. So that guy matters. Chris Carson, there might be sometimes when he matters, occasionally.
He is the perfect test case scenario. Test case scenario, does that even work? I don't know. He's the perfect test subject for the idea of whether or not running backs matter. And I will say I'm still of the belief that there are a select few running backs that matter so much that running backs matter. And, that's actually the argument, though. Let me interrupt you. That's actually the argument by the nerds, is that there are a few. So, okay. But it's so few. They're so few and far between. We're talking like a handful a decade. Like one a year. One a year might be overstating it. Wow.
Yeah, it's really, let's say one a year, just for cleanliness sake. Like there's one every year maybe that matters. Because we just see guys come in and do similar production. I mean, you see a guy like CMC who has these monster games, and yet the Panthers keep not winning their division. So
But there's also the added element of some of these guys, and the reason I push back on it, and I think I'm the lone person that is standing on this army. Excuse me, this is not an army. I'm standing in this army. I'm like Jon Snow. I'm Jon Snow in front of the Boltons. They're coming at me, and I pull my sword from my sheath, and I say to them,
"This feels more right, but you should be the." You shouldn't be Jon Snow. You should be the bad guy in this case. We should get to be
Ramsey. Oh wow, I'm evil because I think running back.
There we go. There we go. Now we're on to something here.
As an ex-mediocre running back in high school, I like to believe that running backs are more than just a handful. I think there's like 6 to 8, and it depends on who. And for a guy like Christian McCaffrey, he had broken Cam Newton last year and Kyle Allen this year. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater is particularly good either. I feel like you are, as a running back, no matter what, a product of your situation around you. Mm-hmm. You have to have, at the very least, an average quarterback if you're going to help your team win football games, because that's just the way that the NFL is these days. But I do think that there are certain running backs, and I would specifically point to the guys that can catch the ball and run the football.
There you go.
Just make it so difficult for a defense to have an idea of what they're going to do when they're on the field. Who do we match them up with? I would say Alvin Kamara is there, McCaffrey when he's healthy. The problem is so many of these guys get hurt. So it's hard for me to stand strongly behind my argument because they get hurt. I don't buy into the idea that some of the guys that fill in for them are as good, even though the production might be as good. Who's the guy is Mike Davis in Carolina this year?
Yep, that's it. Yeah, Mike Davis, former Seahawk, almost in our Mount Crushmore bracket. Oh, he was. He was a 16 or 15 seed in our bracket. People loved him.
That's fantastic. He has been good there. Don't get me wrong, but you watch Christian McCaffrey and you see the difference. I hate to be that guy. Oh, you didn't watch the film, and I know that's something that I saw Mina Kimes tweeting at somebody like sarcastically today. Oh, didn't watch the film. And I was like, dang it. That's what I used to be. And I'm trying to be less that guy these days. I think there are certain guys who are, first off, great at finding space when there is none. And I also think that there are guys who are great at just dragging people. And I would say that Carson has the former in some extent, the latter to a huge extent. Like, I think he's just great at getting yards. And you know what? There are a lot of running backs that are probably like that.
Yes.
I would point at when they did not have him against the Packers with Marshawn Lynch, with Travis Homer, how bad the running game looked when they did try to run those first couple of drives of the game. That to me is how I highlight that. There are certain running backs who matter. Chris Carson's in that borderline. I'm not sure if you should pay him, but I think you're going to be bad without him club.
I'm not going to try and convince you, but the very first thing you said 3 minutes ago at the beginning of the whole rant, which thank you for the rant, it was perfect. The first thing you said was that CMC, you can see the drop off, right? When you go to the other guy, but then you need an average quarterback. That's actually a big part of the whole running backs don't matter argument, is the fact that a great running back with a bad quarterback isn't going to get you a lot of wins, but a great quarterback with a bad running back will get you a lot of wins. And that's what we're talking about a lot in the doesn't matter portion, is it doesn't matter in the end, in the final result. Running backs don't really matter. Yes, they're interchangeable to an extent. Yes, there are some guys whose backups are a lot worse, but given a situation where you have a great running back and an average quarterback, you're going to win fewer games than when you have the great quarterback and the average running back. So it's a mattering in the end result as well. That is kind of a big point of that. And it doesn't get said very often.
And I get the argument too, and it's not one that I'm going to entirely dismiss because I'm realizing I'm kind of alone on this one, and
not totally
digging my feet in. Well, but there are some, and this is the problem. Twitter's bad, as you know.
I've already established this.
We are not good at communicating back and forth these days. It's hard, I think, to have a nuanced discussion without getting really angry at the other side, whether it's about politics or it's about, you're a nerd. You look at Pro Football Focus and like, oh, you think that you know everything because you watch the film. It's this back and forth of condescension.
That is it right there.
And anger that doesn't allow for the discussion to take place a little bit further. I would argue that the one exception, and had they made the Super Bowl last year, I would have been mad because I hate this team and I hate their fans. But Derrick Henry has pulled up Ryan Tannehill. So would he be the one running back in the handful that would be in this conversation for the people that say some very few running backs matter?
Yeah, if you're going to have a list of running backs, he's probably the poster boy because he does it all. Like, he's like if Chris Carson were slightly better and slightly bigger and slightly faster and slightly more productive, right? Like, he does all the stuff. He carries people. He catches. He breaks tackles. He has great top line speed. Yeah, probably. But even then, you could probably point to Tannehill's numbers going up a ton from his career, as opposed to point to the reason that the Titans end up winning 12 games or 11 games instead of 8 or 9, which I think they would win 8 or 9 games with Derrick Henry and say, I don't know, grab some Jameis Winston.
Okay.
Right? Or Teddy Bridgewater or somebody like that. Can you Andy Dalton, someone like that you can just get like as a good backup. I think that's the difference, is the improved quarterback play, which I don't think is due to the running back. I think that's independent of the running game. But that's a whole different discussion altogether.
And there's way more nuance to it. And to be perfectly honest, like, I'm one of those guys who likes to like scrape the surface of it, goes a little bit into it, doesn't quite go all the way, which I'm sure frustrates a lot of people that listen to me. I'm just an entertainer, people. The one other one that I will point at, though, the one other running back who, ever since he stopped being the same guy, and Mina Kimes and I sort of argued about this. I know Mina strongly disagrees with this. Why have the Rams not been the same since Todd Gurley's knees stopped working? And while their offense has figured out ways to move the football, they were noticeably different with different Todd Gurley in the second half of that season. And yeah, Thick J. Anderson had those big games. So I understand the argument. Okay, well, he stepped in and he did just as well. But they were unstoppable for the first half of 2018. And since then, they've been weird. And I'd point, I guess, at Jared Goff as a quarterback who, before, with Todd Gurley, looked like a guy who you would argue is top 10. Post Todd Gurley, he's overpaid. And that's another one that I would point at, but I realize there is way more nuance to it. This is a simplistic way of saying, well, the before and after, doesn't that mean that this guy mattered?
So remember when the Wildcat was going to come to the NFL, it was going to change the way. Yeah, no, people tried a little bit and defenses adjusted, right? So remember the read option, Colin Kaepernick and Russell Wilson running it. That was going to change everything too. And for about how long was that pretty well unstoppable on offense? A couple years, right? Mm-hmm. This is, I think, what has happened to the Rams. Is the league happened to the Rams. I think defensive coordinators in general, or at least a few of them enough to matter, defensive coordinators matter, got wise and figured out how to defend the Rams offense a little bit better. There was so much going on when Sean McVay came onto the scene and they started to install that offense, and there was pre-snap motion and there was so much misdirection to the extent that nobody else was doing in the league. It took the league, I think, a good year, maybe year and a half, to figure out how to defend that properly. And that coincided with Gurley leaving. And I think that those things are not connected. I don't think having Gurley in that offense was connected to their offensive explosion. I think it was just they were revolutionary for a short time, and then the league, as it always does this, it figured them out.
You're right on that front. And you know, one of the frustrating things about this year, maybe not for Seahawks fans, it's been enjoyable to watch the 49ers in turmoil.
Oh, always.
They have found a way to do it without the one running back. And that offense, there are some similarities between Shanahan and McVay in the way that they run things. I'm really curious to if people would have adjusted to the offense this year, because they were hit so hard by injuries, and you know,
the most of any team.
Sanders go, yeah, and I mean Deebo Samuel. I hope he's the same player again. I love Deebo Samuel. He was fun to watch last year.
Yep, for sure.
But I mean, you have the Jones fracture going into the season. Like that's a huge injury to come back from, especially for a wide receiver when you're planting. They've dealt with so many injuries this year. I almost want to wonder, I don't want to wonder. I wonder what would have happened this year if they had been healthy and if teams would have adjusted to them. There are other arguments too for why the Rams kind of fell off too. The holding got called a little bit differently last year than it was the year before. They were calling it, I think my co-host Danny made the argument they were calling holding a little bit more last year than they were the year before. So the Rams offensive line was getting away with some things maybe in 2018 that they weren't in 2019. I might have to dig into that a little bit further, but I remember we at least discussed that.
It's worth looking at.
Also, I mean, maybe some of the guys that they had re-signed to those extensions just weren't very good. But this is a great conversation, and we got to do this again, John. This is a blast. 2 things before we hit the road.
Sure.
2 things. Who is the most underrated Seahawks Twitter follow other than at Beast Pode and at Michael B. Jargon and at John David Fraley?
Oh, you took all my answers from me. So I really like it. See Mike's spin move. Griffin is a really funny dude.
Okay.
And not a lot of people necessarily know that, but he doesn't miss with his tweets very often. So at C Mike spin move.
Okay, at C Mike spin move. And
Mike spin move.
Christian Michael. This is fantastic.
Yeah, so that's a coincidence, kind of.
Kind of.
But yes, he's the first. He's the first. Also, actually no, that's it.
Okay.
I'm not going to start adding names because then somebody's going to be mad that I left them off.
Yeah, then we'll have to put a list on the bottom.
Nope.
I'm not good enough with editing for that stuff. So and this is your chance to roast a friend or perhaps an enemy of yours on Seahawks Twitter. We're trying to start some beef in these streets.
Good. Here we go.
Who's the worst follow on Seahawks Twitter?
Okay, so the worst follow on Twitter is not Mike Chan. Because Mike's awesome, and I've met him a couple of times in person. He could not be the nicer dude. Huge Seahawks fan. He loves his Seahawks. Lifer. We've gone to a game together. We've watched games together. He's great. However, I'm not answering Mike Chan. If you don't know what Mike Chan is doing on Twitter, then he's the worst follow on Twitter. You have to know what he's doing, and once you know what he's doing, then it's great. But if you don't know what he's doing, if you don't know what he's doing, he's the worst. But he never trolls. Just ask him. He never trolls.
Okay.
Just ask him. He'll say it right away. He never trolls.
Okay.
But besides that, I mean, nobody should follow me because there's a lot of bad puns, and I just will tweet about anything, including politics. So there's really, if you want to follow somebody, it's really important that it not be me.
So you're making it worse.
Unless you like puns and politics, then please come on, and I'll welcome you.
I mean, I appreciate you because you liked some of my terrible puns.
Puns for the win. Dad jokes.
Yes, dad jokes are great. I'm 31 years old. I'm already doing them. And there's nothing better. John David Fraley, this was a blast. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope we get to do this again. Make sure that you listen to the Beast Pode podcast. If you need the spelling on that, B-E-A-S-T, like Beast, P-O-D-E, Pode. It's like P-O-D, the band, but with an E at the end. At Beast Pode, at Michael B. Jargon, your co-host. John, this was a blast, man.
See you very soon. Thanks for having me.